Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. This is the sort of front end of a load of random clips that I need to join together. Major watering session yesterday and again today. Lots of clips of all different sorts of things, and those observant of you will, out of the corner of your eye, may see a first-time bloomer. But I've just had a little bit of fun having a race. My battery was almost flat, and I sort of set it up to download onto the computer all 24 clips of today's filming. Yesterday's have already been offloaded. I have about 40 clips to put together. That's probably going to make quite a lot of videos. But they all need a front and a, well, I don't always have to put a back on a video, it can just stop, you know, but I do like to have a front end. But we just had a little race. My battery said that there were 19 minutes left, and the battery life indicator on the camera is never really that accurate. And when I set it up to download, it said 12 minutes to go. So it was like watching a little race, because the minutes on the camera battery were going down and the time it was taking to download them was going down, and I thought, I wonder if the battery will run out before it gets there. Anyway, that managed. I've just got the spare one in for now. But yeah, I've done a Holy Clay Pots update. And that might actually get posted before you even hear this. I did an update on the Latorias that somebody asked about. I've done a Tolumnias update that somebody asked for, and I've done the resting Dendrobium. So there's quite a few sort of separate self-contained videos, but there's also some random sort of clips of things that I found while I was watering, new spikes, you know, various things like that. So I'll stick this bit on the front of something, as yet unknown. Now here's a question for you. I don't know the answer to this. I know one person who may well know the answer, but even then, maybe, you know. It's to do with, I'm doing a CalMag feed at the moment, and this is the type of plant that it's perfect for. If you look at what's going on with the plant, there's an awful lot of mature leaved bulbs. I don't think I've got any unleaved bulbs on this one, but massive strong new growth, massive strong new growth, massive strong new growth, another one just starting. So we all know that pushing some extra calcium into that plant is going to help build those structures. The question is, if you've got a plant that hasn't started its new growths, would the additional calcium trigger them? You see what I'm getting at? Bearing in mind one of its primary functions is cell structure and building blocks of the plant, does it trigger it? If you actually give that sort of feed when the plant is apparently doing next to nothing, would it push those into growth? There's an open question for you. But, you know, as far as that type of supplement is concerned, this plant is an absolute prime candidate. That's when it's needed. When it's pushing out growths at a rate of knots like that, and get some extra calcium in there. Good stuff. That's purely by chance it's getting it today. It just happens to be, I can't go round singling plants out. I haven't got the time, and you know, I'd have to have lots of different types of feed on the go, including possibly flush water to get to plant level. So if I'm going to do a CalMag feed, they all get it. It's as simple as that. Whether they need it or not, they're going to get it, because I haven't got the time or the patience to keep differentiating with this number of plants. So it's just part of my routine now. I'm adding it in. It's very low, TDS 80, so it's just a little top up. I'm chucking gallons of the stuff in there, but it makes sense to me to give those two elements a little boost now and again. Because even though my fertilizer's got plenty in there, it's still subject to how much of that is absorbed. And bearing in mind I feed at very low levels as well, you know, there's a limited amount getting in there, and with a plant like that bursting out with all its new growths, I can see that a little kick in that area could be useful. So that's why it's in the routine. I still don't know how often, because I'm not really into the growing season yet. But a plant like that, that's growing now. You know, so that's going to get, you know, the little extra help that one's just been given, I'm sure will do the world of good. Orchids are full of surprises. I was not expecting any spikes on this for a while until the new growth matured, but this it's a strange one. It's Hamilton Ara, but we do have a new spike coming on one of the older maturer growths. I forget which one it was in bloom when I got it, obviously. Yeah, that was the one that bloomed. And it's the one in the centre of the plant, the larger one, that's pushing up a spike. It's also pushing up a nice new growth at the same time. Yeah, that one has taken nicely to being repotted. Didn't drop many, if any, roots. And that new growth will provide a whole new set as it pushes on. So yeah, that one's doing well. It did seem like a good plant when I got it, but I've been caught before with these intergeneric Oncidium types where the plant doesn't look bad until you get it out of the pot, and then all that's in the pot is medium and rot. And what you thought was a good plant suddenly isn't, and it was obviously just hanging on in the nursery under those perfect conditions long enough to actually get some sucker like me to actually buy it. But anyway, this one seems to be a good one. This is so we'll have some more of those blooms in the distant future. I mean, I don't know. Again, I haven't grown a spike on this one before. I'll now update my notes, take the date back a couple of days as to when that spike started, and then I'll update the notes with the date the first bloom opens, and then in the future I'll know how long the spikes take to develop. And obviously if that was a summer spike, it would probably develop a bit quicker than a winter spike. But apart from that, I like to keep those notes. But yeah, some progress on that one. New growth and a spike. This is just a random clip that I'll slot in the middle of a video somewhere or other. But I do get personal messages on my channel. And literally because somebody told me, not that I found out myself. If you've ever sent me a personal message and you send me another one by adding it to the message you've already said, the chances of me seeing it are 0, because YouTube doesn't tell me I've got it. And obviously it's an older message that's buried right down the bottom of all the others. So just a sort of, you know, like a protocol thing. If you want to send me a personal message, I'm happy. That's fine. Send me emails with pictures of your plants and things. I'm quite happy with all that sort of stuff. But if you send me a personal message, please start a new one. And then it will be on the top of my list and you can guarantee I'll see it. Whereas if you add it to an old one, you know, chances are I won't, I'm afraid, because YouTube doesn't notify me of those things. It tells me when I've got comments, and obviously email's a separate entity anyway, that's nothing to do with YouTube. But yeah, those personal messages can easily get lost. And then from my point of view, I don't see them. And from your point of view, it seems like I'm completely ignoring you, which obviously I wouldn't do. So yeah, if you are going to send a personal message, please start a new one. I mean, unless it's a sequence, you know, unless you've sent me a message, I've replied, and then you reply to that. You know, I keep my eye on those while they're running. But yeah, a brand new message will be right at the top of the list. An addition to an old one could be 10 pages in, you know, and I'm just not going to see it. So yeah, a little bit of advice on that front. Two of my Phalaenopsis type Dendrobiums are actually in bloom at the moment. One of them has only got one bloom left. The whole of the rest of that spike aborted the buds. They just blasted, probably just too cold. But this spike's hung in there. We haven't had a chance to have a reasonable look at these blooms. I mean, they just look like plain purple from a distance, but as you can see, they really have got a pretty pattern on them. And a lovely rich purple, or more a cerise purple colour, I suppose. That's actually a named variety. That's Thai Angel. The other one's just a no ID. But as plants go, these two aren't bad. You know, they've got good green leaves on them. They've pushed up some new growths. Both of the latest growths have bloomed, so they sort of get to stay because they're doing okay. This one at the back So you have to excuse, I can't move the purple one because it's a leaner. It's one of those where it's weighted on one side, and even though I've just watered it, if it wasn't leaning against something it would fall. But it'd be easier to get this one out. This one's what I call hanging in there. I mean, my Phalaenopsis types don't do very well, it's as simple as that. This one had quite a serious problem on it. That spotting on the pseudobulbs was like that leaf, all over the plant, really bad. Given information at the Orchid Society on a different plant, that looks highly like biting bug damage that's then got that secondary infection of some sort. But the two latest growths on this one are clean, so they have got nice green leaves again, and it has pushed out several new growths. So this one's just about hanging in there. One of them I've just chucked. I've just literally dumped it now as I got it down to water it. I looked at it and I thought, no, you're not worth keeping. It's another pot taking up shelf space. And although I really do like this one, the Phalaenopsis type Dendrobiums are not my favourite. So 3 is enough. You know, 2 no IDs. 1 is yet to be identified because it hasn't bloomed for a while. The white one, I quite like this one. It's quite delicate. And the named one. I'm happy with those 3. The other one was just in too poor a state and not worth the effort or the shelf space. So we're down to 3 instead of 4 now, one of which has still got to be identified. I've got pictures of all of what I had. I think I had 6 at one point. Okay, we're down to 3. 2 of them are identified, 1's still to go. And you never know, this one may bloom on this latest cane. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, these are very delicate blooms. That's why I've stuck with this one. I do like those flowers. So you're lucky really that that latest growth pushed on well, otherwise you'd have probably been out fertilising the hedge. This epidendrum keeps getting missed out simply because of where it lives. It's up in front of all the big cattleyas, so it's a real pain to get down as a separate sort of plant, so it often gets forgotten to be filmed, and every time it does get picked up on the camera it's right against the light on the window, so you very rarely get to appreciate the depth of colour on this one. All 5 spikes are opening now. There is actually a 6th spike, but it seems to be a bit behind the other 5, but all 5 spikes are now opening blooms. This was the first one. So obviously there's a lot of blooms open there, but you can see the style of the way these spikes work. Look at how many more buds there are to come. Now in theory they extend for some considerable time as the older sort of blooms drop off. But I saw this at Malvern, walked over to it, picked up the tag, no ID, just I know it's a radicans type, but that's about all I do know. And even in that marquee, under those artificial lighting conditions, I could see that the depth of colour, I'm a sucker for orange at the best of times, but the depth of colour on this is stunning. It's an absolutely superb version of the many radicans type hybrids, because some of them are quite wishy-washy in colour. Sorry, pastel. Wishy-washy. Whereas this has got a lovely deep colour. You can get red ones, you know, but you know, they go right really through the yellows right through to the deep reds, but this one stopped halfway. It stopped on the orange, and it's absolutely gorgeous. And this is going to be out in bloom for a very long time, with 5 spikes on the go in succession. Number 1, number 2, these 2 came together, and this one following on behind. It's going to be out for ages. What a gorgeous splash of colour. And this was not an expensive plant. You know me, I'm tight. I don't like spending money, especially on a no ID thing, but I was just sold. As soon as I saw this colour, I thought we'll have some of that. And I'm well pleased. The plant, all of these spikes are on new canes that have grown since I got it. So it grows like a weed, you know, literally grows like a weed and then blooms like that. Absolutely gorgeous. Well, somebody asked how my Sailaja crostata spike was doing and has it blasted. Well, to tell you the truth, I'm not sure. So I'm not sure how thick and swollen these buds should actually look before they open, because I haven't had one before. I mean, this bud, given that it's the first one on the spike, in theory it should be the biggest, and it isn't. So maybe it has, maybe that one is going to blast, I don't know. But, well, we'll just have to wait and see. As I say, I've never had a Sailaja crostata bloom before, so I don't really know what to expect. But, well, we shall see. I mean, if I just get one bloom out of those set of 4, I'll be happy, because there's 4 buds on there at the moment. I don't think the spike's going to extend anymore. Yeah, I think it's just the 4 buds. This one looks the biggest. But we'll see. You know, that's all we can do is wait. Now, I hope this little plant hears me talking to it, because it's on borrowed time. This is Dendrobium stardust Firebird, and it's a rampant kiki machine. The mother plant had nearly twice as many kikis as it did canes, and as a consequence it looked awful. So I took some kikis off and planted them, and I thought, you've got one more chance to grow from the base properly, otherwise I don't want you, because you just don't look right. Well, one of those kikis has got some nubbins. Now, they could be flower spikes. It's also grown a kiki out of the kiki. This is what I'm getting at. It's a flipping pain, this one, but that's also got a nubbin on it. So it may bloom, and if it does, great. But also, it needs to push some new growths from the base of those what were kikis and are now, you know, sort of semi-established plants. They haven't got the best of root systems, but at least they've sort of taken. So this is your last chance. The blooms are nice bright orange. They look similar to Unicum, but more elaborate, shall we say. They are pretty blooms and a reasonable size, but it's not a good grower. Whatever went into that, because it's a very complex hybrid, there's a conflict there somewhere where the plant just keeps continuously growing kikis. It might be one of those where if it was grown really cool, it might grow better. I certainly don't think it needs to be grown really warm, because it's certainly got an element of nobly in it, but oh, it's a funny one. Anyway, we'll see what those little nubbins do. But it's its last chance. I mean, I gave it a chance, and this is its last one. I know that doesn't seem to be taking up a lot of space, but it's still a pot on a shelf, and that's the space I'm really short of. Everything on my shelves is now going to have to justify its existence. So, and at the moment that may be just hanging in there if those are blooms. This is another one of those difficult decisions. I've got a plant that's struggling a bit, and it's decided to put a spike up. This plant is very special to me. I probably would never be able to get it again. It's classed as Oncidium Alexandra, and it was crossed with like one of its own siblings. So it's classed as a hybrid, even though it's crossed with itself. But I won't be able to get that again, I doubt. That came from McBean's, and it went downhill. It really objected to being repotted, but it did push out a new growth. Now that new growth is about the same size as that one, not as big as that one, and that's a very old back bulb. But the strength of the plant is very suspect. If you look at the old bulbs, they're very desiccated. 2 of the old bulbs have got leaves. The new growth has got 4 leaves instead of 2, so sort of a bit of progression, but it's now decided to push a spike up. Now, for the sake of the plant, I should take that spike off and put all the energy into pushing another new growth, or preferably 2. But I haven't had this one bloom for me before, and this plant, as an orchid, has a real history. This was one of the first orchids to be bloomed in the UK back in Victorian times, and it's really responsible for the orchid craze in those days. You know, so it is pretty special. It wasn't called that then. It's Odontoglossum crispum, but it had to change its name and lose all the history, of course, unless you look it up. But I don't know what to do with this one. This is I'd love to see the blooms. They are very, very special. And I just don't know whether that plant's got the strength in it and whether I should just wait. But the wait will probably be at least a year, you know, for it to start more new growths and mature them and produce another spike and push that on to bloom. It's probably a minimum of a year. Oh, I don't know. Decision not made. I can't do it now. I'm in one of those moods where I'm watering because I have to rather than because I want to. So decisions are not best made when I'm in that frame of mind. While I've got it out, this funny Dendrobium with the weird name, somebody asked how the spikes are progressing. Well, they are progressing. Quite honestly, I'll be glad when this dumps the rest of its leaves. This one needs a really good tidy up. It has many canes like this that are, they've had it, you know, they're lifeless. And there's probably half the canes in that boat. And down at the base of the plant, the new growths are coming. I can see at least 2 just starting. So, yeah, now would be a good time to actually tidy that up. Get those canes out of the way. Because the thing is with old canes on Dendrobiums like that have got tatty, when the new growths come, they can be pushed into the vacant space by canes that you have no plans on keeping. So they're better out of the way and let the new growths come up in the gaps. But yeah, I don't know what went wrong with these leaves. But they, not all of them did it, but it seems that, you know, I mean, if you look over here, these leaves are fine, but some of them just developed that rather worrying pattern. But they will soon be gone. You know, they're gradually coming off, slowly but surely, and, you know, there's less than half a dozen, well, about half a dozen left, so they won't be there much longer, and then this plant will have virtually no leaves. So it's not going to be able to photosynthesize. So, you know, I'm leaving whatever leaves I've got on there deliberately until these new growths get going and produce some new leaves. Otherwise, that plant's going to be in the doldrums. And I mean, at the moment, it's using a lot of its energy to push those spikes out. So the photosynthesis part of this plant is weak. Now, obviously, I can still feed at the roots, but that's not the same thing. The photosynthesis produces stuff that you can't feed in through the bottom. And it's a combination of all that that makes the plant work. So so I'll just leave it for now, I think, and we'll come back to it in a couple of weeks, perhaps, when I'm in the mood. Now, this Ilaria picta has actually opened its 2 blooms, and I've got a nasty niggle in the back of my mind that these blooms don't fully open on this plant. They just open enough to let the pollinators in, which means you don't get to see the inside, which is rather pretty. Lovely sort of deep purple spotting. But if that's as far as they open, we're not going to get a full view of that. That's about the best I can do. Which is a shame, but if that's, I'll have a look on the internet, but I've got a feeling just in the back of my mind that that is how they open, and they rarely open too much more than that. Now it's going to rain again. I thought the sun was going to come out. Can't make up its mind today. But they are pretty little blooms. Lovely sort of gentle green colour on the outside, creamy green. More of a yellowy green on the inside. And some lovely sort of purple markings and things going on in the middle, which is not really in full view, but that may be what it is. But at least I got some blooms on it, so you know that's a first-time bloomer. So that's the first time I've ever seen those blooms in real life. I don't even think I've ever seen one of these plants at a show or anything. I don't recall it. But anyway, at least I got it to bloom. Now you're just being silly. There's flipping great hailstones coming down now. What a racket.